show God and others is respect. Respect is when we have due regard for another's feelings, beliefs, traditions, and wishes. We don't have to agree with the other person. We don't even have to like them. But to be in relationship with another means that we have respect, consideration, thoughtfulness, civility, and deference. We live in challenging times when it comes to respect. And I believe that the internet is really a wonderful tool, but it also encourages an increasing culture of disrespect because of both its openness in allowing postings that are untrue and postings lacking in respect. It might be because of the anonymous nature of the tool or the ability to say anything without looking the other person in the face. It seems to be a great platform for our worst angels. But it isn't just Facebook that people use to be mean, rude, or bullying. We've seen that behavior bleed out into all parts of our society, in the places where we shop, in the parks, in meetings, in our car rides, in our homes, and even in our churches. Even as a minister, I've been knowingly lied about, called names, and even cursed at in my office. We are slipping in our culture when it comes to respect. We've worshiped the God of individual desires and lack of impulse control over our God who has both shown us respect and taught us to respect others. In Paul's great letter about grace to the churches in Ephesus, which was meant actually to be circulated as a kind of traveling sermon, he addresses this issue in what we have numbered as the 5th chapter. This is one of the more abused passages in the New Testament, but it is really about godlike respect that is to be shown in the most nuclear part of our society, our home. While the passage may seem dated, we must remember the culture of the time. No one reading this passage in the 21st century can really understand how progressive Paul's words were. The picture, and some would say picture-perfect view of Christian marriage, is still widely and casually accepted. But when we realize what Paul's culture broadly accepted, we see how revolutionary this writing was. Generally, Jews at the time had a low view of women. Even though the Torah made great strides in protecting women thousands of years before, in Paul's time, Jewish women were not thought of as persons, but as things. Women had no legal rights, and they were absolutely the possessions of their fathers and then their husbands. Divorce was really easy if you were a man. A man only had to write out a bill of divorce and escort his wife to the door. That's it. She had nothing except for her dowry to take with her. Women had no rights to divorce at all. In the first century, the institution of marriage was so threatened that Jewish girls were beginning to refuse to be married because their situation was so perilous. And I say, good for them. The situation was even worse in the Greek world, where prostitution and mistresses were a way of life. Demosthenes wrote, "We have courtesans for the sake of pleasure. We have concubines for the sake of daily cohabitation. We have wives for the purpose of having children legitimately and of having a faithful guardian for all our household affairs." In a Greek home, wives were literally not seen. They had their own apartments and remained secluded there, not even able to show up for dinners and banquets. In Rome, things were even worse, if you can believe it. In the Roman world, people married into divorce frequently in order to gain a younger spouse, more money, or more power. Multiple marriages in a single life were common. And I'm talking about 10, 11 marriages. This was brought on by a culture in which the atmosphere was commonly accepted that adultery was normal. The marriage bond had completely broken down. It's against this backdrop that Paul wrote this revolutionary passage about fidelity, respect, and behavior that led to love. This is a new kind of command for both Jewish and Gentile Christians who grew up in societies where the head of the household was the only one able to pressure and prod their partners, their children, and their workers. Here, Paul says a new thing. All in the household are to respect one another. All are to be imitators of Christ. To be godlike is not a power-wielding, abusive role. To truly be like God is to love, show reverence for the gifts one has in the relationships that surround us. The give and take in a respectful relationship is not an option. It's a requirement, Paul says. For example, life partners are to love each other as they love themselves. Our life partners become inseparable from us in the goodness that we show to one another. We sacrifice for the other as Christ sacrificed for us, which is a tall order. Each of you should love your partner as yourself, with each showing respect for the other. Another example is our relationship with the children in our lives. If women were in jeopardy during this time, children were more so. Fathers could sell children into slavery, make them work in the fields in chains, punish as he liked, even to the point of death. At the birth of a child, that baby was laid at the feet of the father, and the father would either walk away, meaning that the child was not acceptable, or he would pick up the child, meaning that the child could remain. Newborn baby girls were often and literally thrown out to die of exposure. Unwanted children were left in a Roman forum where they became the property of anyone who cared to pick them up. They were collected at night by people who nourished them in order to sell them as slaves or to stock the brothels. It was against this situation that Paul wrote. Children are to respect their parent figure. Paul reminds us that this is the commandment that has a promise, so that it will go well with you. But a child learns respect by being respected. Revolutionary. A child should not be provoked with anger or thoughtlessness. We are to bring up children in training and instruction that reflects Jesus Christ. The first view of the love of God comes into children's lives through the parenting adults in their lives. So when a child looks into our face, do they see the love of Christ? If not, we need to change what they see. Will a child grow up one day and say, I learned about the love of God by watching my parent or grandparent, teacher or neighbor, Sunday school teacher or aunt? We give a lot of thought to and care to a child's development physically and intellectually. The same care must be taken in a child's spirituality, because it is from one's spiritual health that the other kinds of health flow. Even a spiritually healthy child will get into trouble from time to time, but it makes a difference in how they handle that trouble when they are taught through Christian love that teaches the values of respect, kindness, boundaries, and identity. And then the third example Paul focuses on is the relationship of the respect that should be shown between the worker and the supervisor. The original English translation of verses 5 to 6 used the word master and slave, but the inclusive translation taps into the original language that really expands this teaching. In our work situations, no matter the setting, those situations greatly influence our lives. We often bring our work attitude home, especially if it's been a bad day. Supervisors and managers can encourage us to do our best, or they can beat the best out of us in attitude as well as productivity. Most of us have endured a bad boss. They just suck the life out of us. Many of us have experienced loving employees, and they do the same thing. Paul tells those who are in authority, as well as the workers themselves, to work diligently and support one another with respect and sincerity, to be loyal to all that we owe Christ, to put our heart into our work. Again, the attitude of respect goes both ways. God has respected us so much that he was willing to lay down his very life for us. God respects us so much that we are given resources as well as work to do. God respects us so much that we are given the gift of relationship full of possibilities. God respects us so much that we are invited to live in the kingdom that has no end. If God respects us this much, how much more should we respect God's other children in our lives? And how much more should we respect our amazing, loving